In my opinion, the founding of the Mormon Church really started when Joseph Smith published the Book of Mormon. There are a couple indisputable facts about this. First, Joseph dictated the Book of Mormon to scribes who wrote down what he said, 3 of them being Martin Harris, Emma Smith, and Oliver Cowdery. Second, Joseph obtained a copyright on the Book of Mormon on June 11, 1829, claiming he translated the book, which legally makes him the author. Third, Joseph first published the Book of Mormon on March 26, 1830. Fourth, Joseph himself counted this as the start of the church.
Right, you're bloody well right.
Question is, did Joseph write or translate the Book of Mormon by divine inspiration and tools? Before we hear the story as I've pieced it together, let's have a little look-see at what the church's official movie has to say about it.
I was one day reading the Epistle of James. If any of you lack wisdom, let him ask of God. That I must do as James directs, that is, ask of God. It was on the morning of a beautiful, clear day, early in the spring of 1820. I kneeled down and began to offer up the desires of my heart to God.
This is my beloved son. Hear him.
In September 1823,
I am your fellow servant.
He said his name was Moroni, and that God had a work for me to do. He told me of an ancient record written upon gold plates, giving an account of the former inhabitants of this continent. The writing on the gold plates was unknown to me. I was told the plates contained a fullness of the gospel of Jesus Christ.
in time, Joseph would be given the knowledge to translate the record which had been revealed to him. Until then, he was instructed to wait and prepare. For 4 years, Joseph returned each September to the hiding place of the sacred record. Each time, he received further knowledge until, at length, he was given permission to begin the long-promised translation. The translation continued. Others joined Joseph in this great undertaking.
All men must repent and be baptized in his name.
One such was Oliver Cowdery.
How are we to be baptized?
2 years later.
I don't know.
The work of translation finished, and Joseph returned the plates to the angel Moroni. The ancient record was published as the Book of Mormon, another witness of
your own personal Jesus.
First things first, let's start with Joseph's first vision. We have 8 written accounts of the first vision from Joseph's lifetime. Summer 1832, November 9th, 1835. One in 1838 or 1839, we're not sure. One in 1840. 2 in 1842, September 15th, 1843, and 1 in 1844. There is a decade-long gap between the time Joseph had the vision and when he wrote it down. If I were 15 and God appeared to me in a vision, I would write that shit down, like, right away. Well, today I'd pop out my phone and videotape it, but assuming that it was the early 1800s. But anyway, let's just ignore this immense span of time between vision and accounting and talk about who wrote these accounts. Can I get away with one paragraph of boring history teacher here without you clicking away? I just want to explain the source for each one up front before I start going through them, because I think that'll be less confusing when you see how I plan on going through them. The summer 1832 account is in Joseph's handwriting. The November of 1835 entry was scribed by Warren Parrish in Joseph's journal. The 1838 or 1839 one is the one published in the Pearl of Great Price. It was originally scribed by James Mulholland. The 1840 account is Orson Pratt and a Scottish pamphlet. The 1842 account is from Times and Seasons editorial, Church History, published by Joseph Smith. The second is from A Cry Out of the Wilderness by Orson Hyde, originally in German. Finally, the September 15, 1843 account is a David Nye White interview from the Pittsburgh Weekly Gazette. I will now attempt to relate the first 4 of these accounts to you. Prior to having a vision, Joseph was concerned to understand how a person's soul is saved. He comes across James 1:15, which in the King James reads, "If any of you lack wisdom, let him ask God, that giveth to all men liberally, and upbraideth not, and it shall be given." So Joseph prays and asks God his questions about salvation, and this is where it gets fun.
God is a concept.
Quickly, before I start, almost none of this is a direct quote. I've abbreviated it for the video. Additionally, I will only be going through the first 4 accounts listed above due to time constraints, but here we go. In a grove of trees near his parents' home, Joseph kneels in prayer. Or, Joseph could not pray due to a swollen tongue and hears invisible people walking towards him, at which point Joseph prays. Or, Joseph was seized by a power that bound his tongue and was shrouded in darkness. Or, the adversary flooded Joseph's mind with inappropriate images, when a pillar of firelight, or fire with a dude in it, or a nebulous light with no source appears, or the natural world is occluded. Joseph is filled with the Spirit, or joy unspeakable. Joseph sees the Lord, or some other dude, or 2 dudes and one says, "This is my beloved son, hear him," or 2 identical twins. The dude who is alone in the night says, "Joseph, these sins are forgiven thee. Go thy way, walk in thy statutes and keep my commandments. Behold, I am the Lord of glory. I was crucified for the world, that all those who believe on cloud, clothed in the glory of my Father." Or, Jesus Christ is the Son of God. Or, Joseph asks which denomination is correct and is told, "None are." Joseph is commanded to join none of them due to false teachings and apostasies. Or, the twins told Joseph his prayers were answered, he would receive a special blessing, should not join any church, and promised Joseph he would be given the fullness of the gospel. Joseph's soul was filled with love and joy for many days, but no one believed him about the vision. Or, a couple days later, he told a firebrand Methodist preacher who said the visions were of Satan and there are no visions or revelations today. Or, peace and calm filled Joseph's mind. Then Joseph started sinning again. Anyone like to guess what the sins of a 15-year-old boy might be? Or, everyone was picking on Joseph because he's seeing shit after he eats the mushrooms out of the cow poop. At 17, on September 22nd, 1822, Joseph called on the Lord again. The room was filled with blinding light. Or, it gradually brightened until it was brighter than the noonday sun. Or, the house appeared to be on fire and then the room was filled by a pure, more radiant form of sunlight. Joseph was visited by an angel. The angel, or a dude, has bare feet and white hands and feet. The angel stands between the floors. Dude floats just a little above the floor. The angel is clothed with purity and inexpressible. The dude has on a magically white robe. The dude's voice was like thunder, but not in a scary way. The angel called Joseph by name and said his sins were forgiven, or, "I am a messenger sent from God. Be faithful and keep his commandments in all things." Or, the angel may have identified himself as Nephi, then showed Joseph the gold plates in Manchester, Ontario County, New York, containing a history of the people of this continent. Or, the indigenous peoples descended from Abraham. Or, Nephi may have said it contained the fullness of the gospel of Jesus Christ. Or, Armageddon was imminent and Joseph was to prepare people for the millennial reign. The plates were engraved by Moroni and his fathers, deposited at God's command and kept by God's power for Joseph to retrieve. Or, these people fell into great wickedness, were destroyed, and the items were hidden by their last prophet. Or, he showed Joseph the Urim and Thummim, which I thought were a set of redneck twins. Turns out it's a pair of nipple glasses and a breastplate. Apparently Moroni, or Nephi, rap a bunch of jive about back in the day stuff. Joseph was prohibited from showing anyone the plates and nipple glasses without permission, lest he be destroyed. He visited Joseph 3 times that night. During the second visit, Nephi prophesies Armageddon during this generation. During the third visit, Nephi forbids Joseph from retrieving the plates to get rich. Nephi appeared to Joseph once the next day. While Joseph was passed out from exhaustion, Joseph immediately found the plates. Or, he first told his dad he was seeing shit and then found the plates. Dude appeared to Joseph as he saw the plates and the light of heaven shone down on Joseph. Joseph could not get the plates after 3 tries. Or, Joseph was told not to take the plates because the message they contained needed to be received through prayer. The angel also explained the process of baptism to Joseph at this point. Joe phoned up God and Moroni answered again. Or, Moroni/Nephi became a regular visitor. Moroni says God won't let him have the plates until after he returns from his sin, asks forgiveness, and serves a penitent period which may have been stated as 4 years. The plates were 7 by 8 inches and thinner than tin, engraved with Egyptian hieroglyph, held together with 3 rings. Part of it was sealed, and the book was about 8 inches thick. The Gospel Topics essay reconciles these and other differences by stating, the various accounts of the first vision tell a consistent story. Though naturally they differ in emphasis and detail, historians expect that when an individual retells an experience in multiple settings to different audiences over many years, each account will emphasize various aspects of the experience and contain unique details. Indeed, differences similar to those in the first vision accounts exist in multiple scripture accounts of Paul's first vision on the road to Damascus and the apostles' experience on the Mount of Transfiguration. First, this does not explain contradictions, only inconsistencies. Second, who says I accept the biblical accounts?
I might ask you the same question.
In the last chapter, we discussed Joseph's treasure digging and his marriage to Emma, so we will skip them here, but I recommend filling in that gap later for yourself. Now let's move on to the witness accounts of the plates.
Can I get a witness?
There exist 2 witness testimonies on the golden plates, the first of which is by translation scribes. The 3 scribes are Oliver Cowdery, Martin Harris, and David Whitmer. Their witness dates from June of 1829, and it has been published with the Book of Mormon since the first edition. I did not investigate if it changed in subsequent printings. Here is a summation of the version currently in the Book of Mormon online edition. The testimony opens with a very legal-sounding swearing to the truth of the statements within, culminating in them seeing the plates and briefly describing their contents and affirming their truth. An angel from heaven showed the plates to them. It claims the entire process to be miraculous. It ends by reminding the readers that if you question what they are saying, you will not get into heaven. It is signed by Oliver Cowdery, Martin Harris, and David Whitmer. There is some backstory on Cowdery and Harris in Chapter 4. For now, let's discuss what they said about this witness letter. In 1838, Oliver Cowdery sent a letter to his brother Warren in which he accused Smith of adultery with Fanny Alger. We'll get to her in Chapter 5. As well as lying and teaching false doctrines. Joseph called Cowdery a liar. This resulted in Cowdery's eventual excommunication from the church and conversion to the Methodist Church. In 1841, the Mormon publication Seasons and Times, Volume 2, included a poem with the line, "Or Book of Mormon, not his word, because denied by Oliver." The LDS Church claims that Cowdery rejoined in 1848, but Hosea Stout's journal accuses Cowdery of attempting to raise up the kingdom again with an apostate later that year. A 1914 book by Charles Shook, titled The True Origin of the Book of Mormon, contains a public confession in which Cowdery expresses sorrow and shame for his connections with Mormonism. Today, the LDS Church asserts that Cowdery never recanted. In an address to all believers in Christ in June of 1838, David Whitmer said, "If you believe my testimony to the Book of Mormon, then I tell you that in June 1838, God spake to me again and told me to separate myself from among the Latter-day Saints." David joined several splinter groups and died rejecting the LDS Church and its priesthood. The March 19, 1831 edition of the Palmyra Reflector quotes David as saying he saw the plates with his spiritual eyes. David provided several different versions of where exactly he saw the plates. When David was excommunicated, the Mormons robbed him and put his family in the street while he was trying to procure a place for them to go. We'll hear more of that in Chapter 7.
Do as you please, sir.
Martin Harris is what would be called a church hopper today. His religious affiliation changed 13 times during his life. In Kirtland, Ohio, he was professing the wonders of Shakerism. Martin even said that his testimony was greater than that of the Book of Mormon. Also, Martin testified that he had never seen the plates with his own eyes. Over the years, Martin would continue to move between LDS splinter groups, other sects of Christianity, and the formal LDS Church. With each move, he proclaimed the doctrines of that group to be true and correct and attested to personal witness of them, which rounds out the 3 witnesses. The Book of Mormon also contains the account of the 8 witnesses. This account is signed by Christian Whitmer, Jacob Whitmer, Peter Whitmer, Jr., John Whitmer, Hyrum Page, Joseph Smith Sr., Hyrum Smith, and Samuel Harrison Smith. I have not researched if the text of this has changed over time, but here is a summary of the account in the online version of the Book of Mormon. Joseph Smith is a translator and he showed the plates to the signers. They saw and lifted the plates. Finally, they reassure us that this is not a lie. For time constraints, I need to dismiss some of these people summarily. First, let's get rid of Joseph Smith Sr., Hyrum Smith, and Samuel Harrison Smith. I'm going to use the Daybell argument. We all saw how his only witness being his relatives worked out. Next, I'm going to dismiss Christian, Jacob, Peter, and John Whitmer as they continued in their familial relationship with Oliver as well as other things. So that leaves us with Hyrum Page, who was married to a Whitmer, and thus 8 witnesses have been summarily dismissed. Moving on to the actual translation of the book now. Emma Smith claimed that Joseph could not dictate a coherent and well-rounded letter at the time of the translation. If that is true, how did he manage to sermonize to people, and why does his mother report him telling lengthy stories as a child that would entertain the entire family for hours? I think it is right and fair to dismiss what Emma has to say on this topic. Joseph first started translating the plates in September 1827 using Emma and Martin Harris as scribes. This was happening in Harmony, Pennsylvania on Emma's father's land. Martin went to Harmony to assist with the translation, but left his wife Lucy at home. When Martin returned from his trip, Lucy refused to share his bed. When Martin returned as Joseph's official scribe in April, Lucy went with. Upon arrival, Lucy searched Joseph's house and property thoroughly for the plates. She was unable to locate them. Joseph claimed he didn't need them present to perform the translation and that they were hidden in nearby woods. Lucy went home. Martin stayed as Joseph's scribe. After much pleading, Joseph agrees to let Martin take the 116 pages they already have home with him to reassure Lucy about what they're doing. Martin proceeds to show the pages to everyone. They're kept locked in Lucy's bureau. Martin damaged the lock while picking it, and Lucy was not happy about that. Then the pages disappeared. It is widely believed that Lucy hid the pages and told Martin that if it actually was a translation and not something Joseph was making up, he'd be able to retranslate them, which Joseph never did. Instead, providing a summarized version Joseph claimed came from Moroni instead of Lehi.
Who would believe that the evil one had already found in her a servant and an agent?
It is important to note that even according to the Gospel Topics essay on this, Joseph used the same means of translating the Book of Mormon as he had for the treasure digging discussed in Chapter 2. I'm sorry, but if those methods never resulted in found treasure, I have no reason to believe they worked to translate the Book of Mormon. Additionally, Joseph's first vision account clearly states that he was not to seek profit from the plates. However, Joseph obtained a copyright on the Book of Mormon. This gave him exclusive rights of sale and profit from this book, which is supposed to be a translation of the plates he is not supposed to profit from. I'll let you draw your own conclusion about whether Joseph was translating the book or making it up. What is certain is that Martin Harris was an abusive husband who became more abusive after becoming involved with Joseph Smith. Martin's behavior began to include adultery with other married women while acting as Joseph's scribe. Again, make of that what you will. Shortly after completing the translation, Joseph relocated to Kirtland, Ohio, but that's a story for another chapter. This is the end of the chapter, but not the end of the story. Could you consider helping more people see this video by giving it a thumbs up, a comment, and a share, please? Come on, it's not like I'm asking you to cook a meal for somebody who just had a baby or something. If you'd like to hear